All right. Sustaining FME development. And first of all, do you consider using FME, you being a FME analyst or developer? And, just chime in. Do you see yourself being in a development shop or just a occasional, analyst, kind of like using Excel or to some degree using some Python to write certain specific solution or specific report? So I think I don't know, I would love that you guys chime in here and what's your opinion on your position using FME? You could consider yourself analyst, but it's more task oriented. And if you consider yourself a developer, and I think that the typical software development paradigm is quite relevant. Yeah, it should be quite relevant to us, and we need to follow, in fact. And I have always consider myself being an FME developer or coder in a general sense. Because people always say I'm not really, because this is no code typically paradigm. But I think code needs to be extrapolated. Coding is extrapolated, using a vehicle to derive a logic, to draft your logic, to come up with an outcome that's consistent outcome. I think in that scenario, I would consider in the software space, of course, this in the software domain. So I would argue, we are coders. And so I decided just to pull up some, online resource on the life cycle. So you see here, analysis, design, development, testing, deployment, and maintenance. So I think maintainability, sustainability is really just in this life cycle. We need to overcome some of the weakest links to make it healthy. Not just after delivery, the years down the road being sustainable. So having said that, just unmute yourself and share some of your pain points as an analyst or as a developer, more importantly. Then what are the issues that you have encountered, and then we can say, hey, what are the strategies and how are the people doing, and we can learn from each other. And I'm listing a few things just based upon my own observation, and certainly not complete. Sometimes you got pinched or you got hurt and you forgot you had a pain. So because this morning I was trying to listen this as a starting point for this webinar, and I think one of the things is just too many files. We just lose track of which is the latest one for the workspace. It's so easy. You draft something, you save it. Version 1, version 2, version with my name, version with somebody else's name. In addition, the workspace name might not be very meaningful, right? Because someone created just use something sitting over there. I think in the team environment, that needs to be avoided. And how do we do that? That would be wrong. And also, so you need to get an output file. Well, sometimes CSV file, sometimes Excel file with multiple tabs, and shape file, visual database, you name it. You always ask to generate some report files, and we can scatter all over different places and try to chase it, right? And what if the output file you hop to the output file, you say, hey, John or Jane, and take a look at that file. Just create an Excel file, and they have that open, and do analysis. They say, hey, I see something wrong. Go ahead and fix this, and you fix it and try to run it. But you cannot write to that file because it's been locked. And how do we handle that? And that is bound to happen, right? Because you cannot always ask them to close that file. I need to write to it. It's just a waste of time, right? And the communication might not be, instantly available for you, to respond to your request. And so the output file can be quite arbitrary, and you're chasing where the file is. And Fernando here actually, is one of my colleagues here in West Virginia. She's on the West Virginia team, and we try to create something in certain cases with ways to deal with that. So that's kind of, sometimes you think it's trivial, but in a production environment, in a multi, kind of like user environment and team environment, it can make difference. And certainly resources are shared, or shared resources are not obvious to use. You say, hey, I have a link, database link, and share with you, everybody can use it. Then you have to open that up and you need to check that out, whether or not that is to the right, using the right user, to the right staging environment or production environment, to the right database and right particular, whatever, essentially all the specifications, there's lack of transparency because it's all embedded in one, hey, my connection, for example. Then it's just not conducive. So in the end, everyone will create their own connection and perhaps using different ways of connecting it and use control. Well, I would say control is something you want to do, but in team environment without control, it's akin to lack of discipline. And lack of discipline is akin to lack of, will lead to lack of efficiency, and will lead to quality issues for sure. Then another thing, workspace update as a result software update. I know that's always one of my pet peeves. I kind of like, we need to come up with a way of doing that and to have institutional kind of rules, if you will, for lack of a better term, regulations and how to deal with them. Everyone's on the same page, right? And I mentioned about too many connections to manage, right? And if you guys can chime in for some of the other, more focused on team environment, not necessarily in one particular workspace. But yeah, particular workspace is fine as well, because I don't want to restrict that and see how many issues that we like to handle to make our work more pleasant, more efficient, and more fruitful. Anyone? You guys are still quiet. Okay. Anytime you come up something to chat, just shout out here, and we will come back to this page and add it. Now, this morning I'm thinking, okay, some of discussion points.
There's a comment in the chat. Paul said he ran across this today that may be helpful for managing packages, custom transformers with supporting code models in the FME. It might pop up. FME hub.
Hey Jenny, I couldn't hear you very well. Could you repeat that again? I can so I can type in here.
Yeah, okay, I'm just reading the comment in the chat. Paul commented, I ran across this today that may be helpful for managing packages, custom transformers with supporting code modules in the FME hub. Also in the little chat box too.
Okay, in the chat, okay. Let me have that chat session open. Oh Lord, how do I do that session? I don't even remember how to do that. Okay. Hold on. Well, I'm not proficient in doing that. But anyhow, I think I heard the custom transformer and from the hub and how to manage it. I personally feel like, yes, some of the custom transformers, you only just use it, but if you use it, share it, you updated it, that can be an issue. That issue is sometimes you do not know which version you're using, because when you download, it downloads into your personal, like under your own profile, just like the SE under your name and roaming and app data roaming as something like that, very deep. And sometimes you do not even know which one you updated, because in the team environment that I mentioned, so that we do have a shared kind of our own team custom transformer, link transformer to share, and that we counter that issue as well. Yeah, so custom transformer management, generally speaking, management. Good point. Yeah. Yeah. So moving on, I think in the team collaboration, because if we're talking about enterprise development, it's more than one people in terms of teams. In terms of resource, and we will have really multiple, we'll talk about resources later. So granted, we have the standard and convention. So here, the standard and conventions in particular, I'm not particularly talking about. I think it's more than just the naming conventions of your custom transformers or a few things like that. It's something else we need to. I think resource sharing is very important. If you have something that everyone should use that represents the right way or the consistent way or just a way for us to do, and so you don't have to reinvent wheel, and we need to make sure it's shared. It needs to be obvious for people to share. There's version management. And one of the lessons I learned not too long ago, do not ever assume any network folder in your enterprise is automatically being backed up. So you would think a file server folder would be backed up, but in circumstances, it might not be backed up. So if you put all your artifacts on a shared drive, thinking it's being all backed up, make sure you confirm with them, saying, are these folders being backed up by the IT on a daily basis, nightly basis? Because you have multiple people, even I'm the most, one of few people, and I inadvertently deleted something. And luckily I wasn't, it was not as important folder, but still took me a couple, 3 hours to get back where we were. I was really distraught after knowing there was no backup. Okay, so then version management is even beyond just the lose of data. That's version management. We'll touch upon that. I'd like to know how you guys handle that, and as well. Then lastly, in team environment, as team development shop, code review is a necessity. You want to, I know from analysts, occasional user or user quite often just might say, you don't do that. But in team environment, it's important. And what we've been doing here, internally, the developers, we cross-check, making sure the standards are basically followed. And there are many standards, of course, in terms of, besides from the naming conventions, like having the description field and having history check and have a consensus on, what time we need to upgrade into a newer version of the same package or what have you, especially for custom transformers, right? So those are the things that we need to be concerned, and we'll touch upon that. And then there's the software engineering side of it. You've probably all heard about drive theory, the drive principle. Anyone would chime in what drive stands for? Yeah, it's kind of, this is do not repeat yourself. Yeah, it's pretty basic. Every time you see a common module, extract that. Don't sit on it. Extract that, making that embedded or even custom transformer, or modularized, or making it a subtransform that can be called from others. So that helps quite a bit based on the PSL and reducing the future enhancements being need to go to different places. Then there's a defensive programming, and I will talk about that a little bit. And there's a pattern design and the DHC configuration, which I will touch on that as well. Then I think third aspect I would think is really DevOps and IT on the IT side. So when we're talking about software development in Artifact, you need to handle many, such as earlier mentioned about software upgrade. You upgrade to new version, and SIG is pretty progressive in releasing the updates, right? And the updated software oftentimes requires you update your workspace or form to be consistent with it, and to keep that updated. And if you have lots of workspace, and how about, are you going to do testing on that? It's only do some testing. We're talking about mission critical. Well, people will say, hey, we are doing GIS. GIS is mostly hanging on the wall, right? It's a pretty map. If you think it's only GIS, yeah, testing might not be as important, but you're really producing reports such as the HTMS report, the search by the miles report, and those are quite consequential. And if you upgrade something, I wouldn't assume it's working. This is where test framework possibly needs to be done. We don't have tons of experience with that, and we dabble into that. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. That's why software development, software is so expensive. It's not just initial writing. Lots of knowledge encapsulated, into the code. The process is difficult to deliver. There's the testing, validation, and sustaining it. Writing tests itself is full-time work, can be. Yeah. And then in the production environment, you have the, certainly to talk about CI/CD in the future, because I really see, I'm using the software kind of like paradigm to kind of put FME development into this kind of overall paradigm, because I am pretty convinced FME is already beyond the GIS world, where people are thinking GIS world just like the mappers or craftsmen or mapping analysts, just building maps, prepare maps, or making pretty maps. No, it's all about data. And FME is all about data. And as I mentioned a few times, and if you have a data issue, there's the FME solution. And so I just think FME is going to go way beyond just mapping work, where the vision was almost everything. It's just data. The intelligence sitting behind the data, trying to review it, try to bring that up, try to make sense out of it. That is the thing. And then which means it is going to be embraced by, if 5% of people doing mapping related to IT and, software development, and the other 95% of people will use it. And so the CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous delivery, could be an issue down the road. But certainly, there's a lot of monitoring as we use the server applications and or providing those on web front end, right? And that's it. So deployment, there needs to be some deployment protocols and automation involved. So I think the last one, I'm covering the last one later, but we're kind of just at the stage of what are we talking about sustaining FME development? So I'd like to hear any feedback at this moment before I share some of the examples and how we did it, how we address some of the pain points that we felt it. Okay. Okay, let's go. Talking about team collaboration. And again, this is quite, opinionated. And just so you know what it's worth, I'm just sharing my own perspective. Yeah. And perhaps I can use slides that. Never mind. So, in standards and best practices, there are many articles, and David in fact, here is one of our co-hosts, and he's pretty big, proponent on the best practice following up, right? And I think that some of the things, for the same umbrella, but I personally experienced that to be helpful. One of the things is the color choices. The FME tends to be, by default, tend to be quite colorful, right? And you have, bookmarks of different colors, the annotation comes different colors. I always I wish the FME have certain configuration can control the annotation colors. So in our case, and I really think the annotation oftentimes is lost in a really colorful world that's almost camouflage. So what we've been doing internally, and which again, were opinionated, I figured I just consistently using this, I probably can switch over now. Can you see my screen here? Okay.
Yes.
So, yeah, good. So essentially saying, hey, I do not use a ton of things, but some of the things that I would just highlight. Using same color. I think yellow tab is nice metaphor, kind of just yellow notes. And just making the habit of making that change so it's visually more impactful, right? So that's one of the things. If I switch to another one, and you notice, you probably notice here, and this one is still working in progress. I do have a few red ones. And red ones only in places that the attention needs to be paid, or some of the menus that need to be there, or some of here, I put it over here is for temporary testing, because this tester is crafting a particular route with which we're having issues, having some overlap, right? So I'm putting over here. So in the future, any of that places, we will just go there and doing it. Okay, so this is in line of partially of the convention, just as simple as color that can make teamwork a little bit easier or the important information stand out. And sometimes if need be, I would have put put another yellow tab over here talking about some of the things you'd like your team member to notice. And I put it over here in lieu of putting under the description. It's kind of debatable, and it's up to you. And I think this is, when you open it up, you see it because it's right over there. You can see it. And of course, you notice I have many custom transforms and modularized because I do not think it's possible you can, one of the, some people from say, I don't know whether it's Don or possibly Don, or Dale, saying that shouldn't any workspace shouldn't be more than 12. I think that's the overly kind of aggressive and probably not very practical. But I think my rule is, if modularize it as you can, so that when you read it, you know this part is clearly with clear input and clear output. So you don't have to, so it's making it more readable. So in the case of here, and I have a couple of custom transformers over here, just say, thing coming in, the output is this. This is for sequence route. Route identifies the first section of a concatenated route, because they were combining county routes into state routes, which is the starting one, is one of the most important things you do, and there's a bunch of surprises that we have to do a few things to get it. So I decided to put it over here. So I think a good, I usually like to bring this into perhaps 60%. I can see them all on my screen. You know, I'm just only using my laptop. I don't even have a second screen because I travel all different places. I got used to just leveraging one screen. Some people have multiple larger screens, you know, it would be a different story. But thinking about putting something in one screen and leverage embedded customer and certainly other customers, custom transformers as you see fit. Okay. So that's that. Okay. I just want to make sure I'm still, because I'm not hearing your feedback, so I'm not even sure I'm still talking to you, or my phone goes dead or what have you. So that's another thing I'd like to share. And let's come back talking about the color choices. And I use artifact naming, because the color naming convention. The naming convention is more than just the, as I earlier alluded to, more than just custom transformer names. And those names, we have decided not to change them. Earlier, we used the 3-letter prefixes to do it. I think just we're not getting much out of it. However, we have decided certain connection-related readers and writers in particular, and some of the testers, we like to make it more readable. The reader and writer, we like to have the target, the database, even the database artifacts, the tables, reading and writing, or at least the database. So we know what type of connection we use. Because sometimes we use SE connections, sometimes we use direct SQL connections, right? So we want to have that at the when you're reviewing it without hovering over a double click opening that up, you will know the type of connection. So sparingly making some important juncture, making it more meaningful rather than just using default feature writer, feature reader. Yeah, and test we always say test, TST underscore or dash of what things you are testing with, right? So that's kind of like that's as far as we will go with that naming convention. However, I'm actually big proponent for workspace naming, and which is more important, I think. And in fact, in West Virginia, we decided we implemented essentially prefix workspace names. For one thing, making it really meaningful, that people look at naming exactly what we're trying to do, because we are no longer in the 8.3 world. For old timers, we realize that, I grew up in an era that file name is only 80 characters long. There's a 3-character extension, no spaces, right? That was the world that I grew up with, and now I like the fact we have more space to express ourselves in names, make it expressive, people understand it, and being consistent in terms of pattern. One of the things we subcategorize them because this helps us in the future when we upload to FME server. We have different repositories to manage that. QC is complete QC, and with QC, a utility and helper functions. Some of it is research functions, right? And report functions, self-reporting functions, and quite a few of them ETL, just translating something, right? Yeah. So I think in connection names, and in fact, I can share with you. How are we doing time-wise? I lose track of time. So, okay, we have 10, 15 minutes. I can go on and on here. Let me go into about. If, for example, I don't know if you can read very well here because you can possibly this guy. No, not this one. This is the zip file extracted. So I'm going to use this guy. So on the workspaces, you see ETL. So this is our main workspace. You know, I made sure we don't have any, you know, secondary versions here. Because if they have secondary versions, I will remove them. I will put either in the archive or debugging or testing folder. Okay. So that this folder is all what's most current. And just don't give me version 1, version 2. Go into version 1, version 2, paste in someplace else, and later you make a decision and paste over here. So we have one and only one that's relevant. That's good. So there's no ambiguity. Because you do not want people to pick up something old and working with it. And this is the place you kick things out. So here we have the QCs. For example, I couldn't blow this up further. Hope it's readable. But I would say event domain batch, event domain batch, or event QC, this for QC, this event QC is for the inter-layer business rule QC, right? And this is inter-layer business QC by rule, that's not the individual rule. So having this consistent and meaningful, and it brings up another benefit. So earlier on we mentioned, right, we have output files, and how we name it. You option naming something, that's not good. Since we put all our efforts into naming, properly name your workspaces, why don't we just use workspace? Because it's unique within your domain, within the folder, right? And then you add suffix and prefixes and suffixes, and then go with it, right? So, for example, the earlier I showed you for this QC, if we have QC reports, this generally, in fact, generally is QC report called event interlayer business. So it will create a Excel file bearing the same name with some other suffix over there. One suffix is whether or not this report is coming from production environment or from development environment, test environment. Because they're all there for different purposes. You don't want to place stuff over there, then people do not know which one they should really care. If it's test environment or staging environment, that's for development. And some people will ignore it. And other people will use it. Then how we handle that you created artifacts for people to review, and people have that open, and if you couldn't write to it. So that's where another suffix comes in place. This suffix, if the user does not specify the particular suffix, it's going to be, we use a timestamp. So that you can have multiple versions of that, but timestamp is sortable. So people will always looking for the most recent one. They can delete the old one. They're in the same root name of that. So that's how we in West Virginia handle this output file name, and what have you. So it could be a CSV file, could be a shape file, could be a file-based database file. They're all bearing the same workspace name. So the lineage is very clearly represented. You know exactly this report coming out from which workspace. This may be trivial, but believe me, and it's going to save some headaches and making it more smooth. Right? So that's artifact naming. I think we went beyond just the transformer name, what have you. And this connection name, and how do we connection name? I think in the same vein, we know is really people can share lots of things, right? They can share what have you. But let me show the example of if I can switch over. Perhaps I can switch over to this guy. And on the tools, under options, under database connections. So we have done here, essentially identify the user, whether it's in production system and staging system, whether it's SQL or SE. Of course, here's all SQL, and which database we're connecting to. So these are different names. So given this name, when you pick it, you know exactly what is going on. So keeping this consistent, it helps. The same thing goes with SE connection, because SE connection is not pooled in this environment. It's a file. We have a common resource file over there, and using exactly the same thing, so you know which connection, we're dealing with. Okay, so that's the naming convention. We benefited quite a bit, and and resource sharing, photos and artifacts. Yeah, photos, artifacts. Earlier I mentioned that your team collaborative folder. Don't let it police it. Don't let it go, crazy. Simply, people can easily. They all have access. They can easily change, right? And creating new files, different versions. Yeah, clean folder being a thing. And you might, in fact, use. I would say you can use Writer FME service, regularly checking your folder and just give a health assessment, and so someone, definitely people go over there, clean things up and coordinate. Yeah, version management, and we haven't done a ton of version management. The only thing we did was in the server, because in fact I researched on the I guess I'm not sure, so bring this up a little bit. I researched online, and knowing that, how come, okay, into that. And, with the GitHub integration is more, I say is more in the context of server implementation. So if you are mostly doing desktop, and there's not a direct way that I know of that you can easily, put onto GitHub. But of course, you can, we write some non-FME code quite extensively from SQL to Node. We can certainly just, do your own GitHub upload and doing those. We haven't done that because it really, you really cannot compare this version and that version. Any minor changes tend to be, regenerate code tend to be not very easily compatible. I heard news it's being better, but I have never tried it. And someone has experience, and I would love to hear from your experience. And perhaps itself deserves a future FME-T session topic we can dive deeper. So what we've been doing, every time we upload, we use commit for this version to go into the GitHub. So in addition to have a version state on the server, you have the version control goes into the multiple versions stored in your GitHub. And this is something we implemented at West Virginia. Okay, and so that's good. And code review, and I mentioned, coding is never easy. Team coding is especially hard. Sustaining it takes a village. Yeah, so that's just reality. So don't. Sometimes we. So it's a lot of work. Okay. And I'm going to pause here for any comments, and then any questions? All right. Software engineering. I'm going to go this really quickly. And do not repeat yourself. The drive principle. And it's obvious, and we practice that. Just sometimes need fight your urge to get something done, do it right. If you really have to get something done, now carve out some time, do it right. Because in the end, later you have to pay more for it. Especially for us consultants, the time, and we make some estimates. Typically, it takes 2 times of my estimate to get things done. And if we do not do it right the first time or the second time, you're going to pay for it, to modularize it. Yeah. And defensive programming. And I don't know, this might not be a word that's used very extensively in the software engineering world, but I tend to resort to this concept. This is right. You need to anticipate where things could break. So always saying, if something happens, if something, let's say a transformer, you have auto join, left auto join, right? Or right auto join, right portion of the combine. And those, if something happens, or some places should not have duplication, as duplication happens, making sure do a duplicating filter. If it happens, you log it, or you terminate it, because we shouldn't let those type of issues testing over there without you even knowing it. So that's a defensive programming. And this is where I put like one of the examples I'm showing here, or perhaps the first example, perhaps. Yeah, and I'll over here, this one for this branch is just over here so we can visualize the outcome or output. We do a geocode feed event if it makes sense. And this is place if I have this and we are writing to a shake file for them to further analyze why there's overlap. Because we thought we did all we can looking into concurrencies, rows and height concurrencies, and identify that we cut through the sub-route already, they shouldn't overlap. But yet, in US route and West Virginia route, going through the process, we still have that. Okay, we're creating it. Then we notify the GIS analyst and whoever is leading more knowledgeable on the data side to take a look at that. So, and then other places, here's another thing, just, hey, you need to pay attention to this. And during development stage, during development testing stage, in production stage, this needs to be notification, needs to be email. So do not let those, do not assume the main flow, is what you need to do. Oftentimes, is the side branches. That maybe 1% case, or even under 1%ers, then it can cause major issues. And also major discoveries inside that. Right? So that's another point here for defensive programming. And I think the pattern and, I pay more attention to pattern than algorithm. The algorithm is fun, but pattern is abstraction, perhaps a group algorithm and logic, making sure that can be repeatable. And yeah, so with that type of design, and in West Virginia, we only have 2 workspaces of each with maybe under 50 transformers can generate all HTML section files. So that's how abstract, once you apply certain patterns, we can achieve. In fact, this year, and I think today, in fact, Fernanda is here. I'm glad she participated in, and we successfully certified our FME process, 2 workspaces generating entire, I think in our case, we are responsible for 40-something section files. Yeah. Combined together about 100, under 100. And that's essentially using pattern, using abstract logic. And there's another thing is GHC principle. I don't think you will know this because I coined it up. So, and I think do not hard code. We tried very hard not to hard code it. Because the moment you hard code it, you lose your flexibility. And one thing to think about, in your development, you're always making your things configurable. Think about same workspace need to work on the development environment, test staging environment, and production environment. If you hard code any of the connections, you're asking for trouble, right? How can you change? You cannot change it. So so what we do is create the parameters. Use parameters. Say parameter will have an environment parameter. Say if it is production, it's going to use this set of connections, either SE connection, SQL connection, and whatever the destination connections for various databases, right? So essentially don't hard code and all stuff. Any place you have to hard code. I understand certain things is only for specific layers. Say, hey, we have row report, 18 layers, overlay them, or 22 layers, overlay them will generate this hub, report that we need to post for the rest of the world to share. Great. In that case, yes, you can hard code it. You don't need to make it, you don't need to make it. However, we have an application, and we have a workspace. It's right over here, I think. It's yeah, this is LS overlay. This is to the extent of it. You're seeing everything here. Yeah, just this workspace, and it actually allows user to select any about 100 road and highway layers to conduct overlay, and optionally to specify which item to group by to generate summary table. You may summarize based upon county and function classification. So the output, the non-spatial output, the spatial output will be just the overlay segmentation with GIS and output. And you will have the summary say, in this county, function classification of 1 having this mileage and that mileage. These are all dynamic, just in this one little workspace of under 30, under 50, I would say, transformer altogether. So that is the power, again, of not hard coding anything, or refuse to hard code and come up using an abstract way to handle the thing, right? And one other thing lastly I want to share before I do, yeah, this is, yeah. I think that to standardize for sharing resources within your group and also standardize your group, we use the West Virginia Initiative Link Transformer. And we also have West Virginia route parser. Because West Virginia has the intelligent routes. Like many DOTs, their route ID is embedded, chopping into multiple components. You can, so that type of logic we use often. Why don't we use a West Virginia route parser? So use that, and every time you use it, just pull this up, and you have it. If you made any mistakes, you only have one place to change it. And initiative is even more important to us because this is where if you are in the production environment, what type of connection series we use, what type of typical filter we're going to use is all specified in that environment. So they have one and only one place to control many of the critical filtering and connection, really, which I consider controlling attributions guiding through the workflow. So I think that's the engineering side of that I share. And lastly, IT, and I don't know how you guys handle the constant upgrade of software, we have decided we're only going to do once. We always end of the year when the last release last release of 2020. We're using that one. But unfortunately, we started with the last release, and later they came up with patch release, and we kind of got stuck because we also need to synchronize that with the server. Having IT doing server things, and it's a quite an issue. We also internally specify everyone needs to know which version you're using. We're using the same version. And to the point, we have to synchronize our company version because sometimes we get something, so companies, license to use, and we have to synchronize that as well. Because otherwise we might lose connection to some of the, especially if some custom transformer is developing higher version, lower versions just won't be able to open it. It's such a pain. And kind of our method of dealing with this type of predicament is to be more conservative. Yeah. I don't know how you guys do it, and I'd love to hear from you. Testing framework. And I really like to know anyone here or you know of doing rigorous testing. And Vernet from I think Vernet from France, a French software company, they developed the R-test framework. One time we even participated in this open source project a little bit, and then we got sidetracked and we didn't participate. But it's quite promising. But recently, I think one of the Scandinavian countries last year at the UC talked about the testing. I kind of like their approach better, essentially more artifact-based, or maybe the outcome-based testing, rather than logic-based testing or individual testing. So but I would love to see someone having any ideas or any experience in developing test framework or using test framework. And it will be fun to dive into this further and the pros and cons and how can we do it, less expensively. It's just so time consuming testing. Yeah. Log monitoring, we haven't done that much. I know David, with his experience, and he was leading the effort, and with our duties, mostly, on the website, monitoring FME and I think also at the time GeoCortex. Right? I think log monitoring is very important when it comes to production. When more and more people relying on your FME resources, and you need to make sure that you need to be, hopefully you can be more proactive, or at least, the major issues will be notified to you. You can come up with triage and what have you to go on. Log monitoring, that will be another topic down the road that we can discuss and share. And deploying protocols. Okay, here we are in West Virginia. We have done testing. We have done development and staging for exception one. Everything is being tested and being confirmed and in production. Now there's an issue of who, at what point, promote it to the production database for people to use. And at this moment, it's still theoretical because we don't even have a production server, FME server yet, right? So in absence of FME production server, perhaps we can use different repository for production repository and separating that from the testing and staging repository. So that's another protocol that needs to develop. And only one people in your organization should approve this promotion from test to production under certain conditions, right? So So yeah, and there's certainly some automation if we can tie this to a testing framework to do that. And boy, we can get the CI/CD going on. That'll be delicious, I think. And well, that's exactly 1 hour. I didn't realize that, and probably that should be just mainly and on and on. And but just open up for questions. Yeah. Okay.
Very good, a lot to digest. Thanks, Bo.
Okay. Thank you, David. Thanks for your compliment. And yeah, we will next topic and
Looks
also
like-
chiming everyone. And,
Did you get to Rick's question?
oh no, I haven't done any questions. Okay, hold on. And you know, my phone isn't all that good actually, turned out to be. So I couldn't really hear either
I can-
you or Jenny, but well,
It's
I'm
in,
gonna hang up and use my computer mic now. Okay, hold on.
Okay, and I'm gonna close the sky and
you see Rick's question?
can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Can you?
Oh yeah, much better. You know, I thought I thought
So there's one question from Rick in the chat. You want me to read it, or you want to?
yeah, I have it.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think Paul from Rising, I ran across this today. Okay.
I think you already addressed that first one. The second one was from Rick, was what I was referring to.
Okay, when committing changes to GitHub for workflow, are they branches that kept tracking the previous commits? And you know, this thing was set up by my colleague Jinzhou on the server side. He's our server expert, and he is sick today, so I didn't get a chance to ask him about this because I know we set it up, and we're using West Virginia's own GitHub. And Fernanda is here. Perhaps Fernanda, you can chime in and see if we're using any of the the branches or not.
Yeah,
Do we have
what
like branch and versus master branch for that?
can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, what GitHub, it works with branch, but also even if you create a branch, do your change, commit that back, merge that with the main and then or the master, and then delete the branch, it keep historical, so you could undo things and you can have historical and then see how they changed the done through the years and all of those commits and things like that. So you can see, you can restore, you can, is a whole you keep a historical of everything, you can undo things and all of that. So GitHub is very common use for development, and is highly recommended because also you have like two people's, let's say it's very common on a project where you work for development, you have different files. So if you have, or even people working with the same file, so then when you merge them, if we have two people working the same document but in separate, so it's hard for us manually to merge those documents together if they are the same documents, like who changed this part and who changed. Git does that for us, so that's very good. And in general in a project, that's very common to do when you have more than one person working in the development. So
from the perspective of FME server, I set this up when I was at Iowa. I think it just commits to the master when you push from FME server to GitHub as a backup repo. But the same sort of thing applies, right? Of like you're able to see and access historical versions, which is really what it's all about. If Jenny was here, she has an interesting method of how she does it up in Connecticut, and it would be worth following up with her. And I don't remember if she talked about it last month. I think she talked about it at one point, but we can definitely follow up, or I would say follow up with her.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not sure about the FME server perspective, like how FME would show GitHub there, but I know that if you go to the website or if you use Git desktop, you could see the historical and undo things or download other versions of the same file. That's for sure. So you have a way to managing, and if necessary, go back to versions and undo commits for sure. I don't have too much experience with FME. I'm just starting in the waters, but yeah, GitHub is very, I highly recommend it because it's something that in the development in general helps a lot.
Thank you, Fernanda.
Of course.
And I think perhaps in the future, let's say in a couple months, and then our next session, let's just talk about version management with FME, and we can have we can have conduct some consultative research, and we can share our research result. Perhaps then this could be something we'll recommend this to Jenny to see what Jenny has to say on that. Yeah. Any other ideas? I think in the future, maybe later this year, we can also talk about testing framework and how it applies to that. Perhaps we are going too far. I do not know. Maybe it's too technical or too, might not be directly related to FME because more a development paradigm overall could help with this. But they are certainly related. Yeah. So that's kind of my where my interest lies. But we need to cater to broader audience, of course. So we'll leave this for Jenny to make a decision. All right, everyone. Thank you very much. And thanks for sharing your knowledge and your comments. I appreciate that. And we'll see you in a couple months, if not earlier.